Hi there. Welcome once again to Reading Aristotle's Politics. I'm Clifford Bates. Today we're looking at the last chapter of Book 8, Chapter 7, Chapter 7 will end the discussion of Book 8. And the ends which ends the end of the politics. So we come to the end of the politics in that sense. So we'll see what happens. I promised I might take a break, a couple day break in this sense, because of something happening, a trip and things like this, and then I'll get on to the next thing because we're going to end up the politics. So therefore, let's go to it right then. Go to chapter 7. Okay, right. We must investigate further in connections with harmonies and rhythms. So it continues the question of harmonies and rhythms. Both with regards to harmonies and rhythms are appropriate for citizens and non-citizens. Which of them are what and what, right? And whether harmonies and all rhythms are to be used with a mode to education or a distinction is to be made. And next, so therefore, what other rhythms, harmonies, which ones are to be used for whom and to which ones should be used in education? And next, whether we shall posit the same definition for those exerting themselves with a view to education or some third definition is needed. So in other words, the text and meaning of the sentence has been much disputed. I believe a line is dropped out. The Lord believes the thing of this is concerning to non-citizen classes of the best regime. The three definitions apply to harmony used by citizens simply, harmony used by citizens for the simple education, and harmony used by citizens for the education of the young and singing and playing instruments. For different interpretations, Lord's understanding for different interpretations, see Crowd and Simpson. Simpson has a different understanding of this. And I'm divided on this. I don't have a strict feeling of either one way or the other. I'm more inclined to think my own interest in this chapter. I really haven't. So many people have focused on this chapters. My real interest has been the middle chapters. Five, 6, and 7. No, five, no, 4, 5, and 6. Those things. Book 3, I did a lot of time. Book 3, book 1, 2, and 3, 5, and 6. 7 and 8 have always been kind of one of those areas where I think it's more kind of always been the kind of, I think this is a test, not really something that's advocating. But the discussion of education and music was always a big thing, and I think Plato's Republic and these things. So now he's talking about this kind of education here. Now he says what? Since we see that music depends on tune, composition, and rhythm, on tune, composition, and rhythms, one should not overlook the power that each of these have in the view of education, and whether one should intentionally choose music with a good tune over music with a good rhythm. Now, this is the idea of rhythm versus tune. This remark may be a difference between lyric poetry and epic poetry, respectively, right? It's lyric versus epic. Considering as right, then, much of what has been said. Remember, the tune here is only lyric poetry, which is kind of like this, and an epic poetry has a great story, great narrative. Right? A good rhythm is like the good lyric, right? And a good tune emphasizes the theme, the characterizing here, right? Considering as right, then, much of what has been said about these things by some of the current experts in music and those in philosophy who have experience with education concerning with music, we shall refer to anyone who seeks a detailed account of each particular. And for the present, we shall make a distinction distinction in legal fashion and speak about these things only in outlines. Now, in other words, we're not going to really get a very scientific discussion. We're going to speak of this. The music experts referred to here are probably associated with the school of Damon and latter characterized by Eryxos and Plato. So therefore, this is. If you want more connected things of this, go see Damon and Plato. I'm just going to give a general outline here for this, for the purposes of our education, the legislative, the legal faction, for the purpose of making laws and forming what was necessary for the laws about this matter. Since we accept the distinction of tunes as they are distinguished by certain persons of philosophy, In other words, there's 33, right? The distinction probably restores from X, or Aristo X appears to be presupposed in the discussion of problems, right? Aristotle's Problems, chapter 19. What a little evidence is available to suggest the tunes relating to character, ethica, corresponds with the harmonies of Lydian as well as Dorian, and those relating to action, parallel to the Hypergarean, Ionian, and the Hypergarean and Elatian harmonies, and those relating to inspiration to the Unthuskia, inspiration to the Parithian. So this is again, this is the problem, Aristotle's problem, where he goes into those details. So therefore, we accepted these things about what they've said here, right? Regarding some in relation to character, some action, and some to inspiration, and they regard the natures of harmonies as akin to each of these, and one of them in part. In other words, the plausible amendment would be in tune, or melos, or part, mesos. So therefore, in tune, in one part of or tune, right? Um, since we assert that music should be practiced not for the sake of a single sort of benefit, but for the sake of several, right? Some, not the benefit of doing it, but several benefits. For it is for the sake of both of education and purification. As to what we mean by purification, we will speak about it simply present, but again, it is more, but again, more elaborately in the discourses on the poetic art. This is the poetics, right? Which is, some argue the poetics is an appendix to the politics, right? The question of catharsis, right? The purgation is catharsis, right? Again, and more elaborately in discourse, and in other words, so therefore, the first thing is that's multiple things. It's for the purposes. The first reason is for education, second purification, and the third is useful to the view of pleasure, rest, pastime, rest, and the relaxation of strain. It is evident that all harmonies are to be used, but that all are not to be used in the same manner, but with a view to education, those most relating to character, the tones and harmonies relating to character, right? Um, with a view to listening to others performing, those relating to action, and those relating to inspiration as well. So therefore, in other words, those in character you should learn how to do, but those you should listen probably to those who are doing action and those relating to inspiration, right? 36, this is that thing. The Dorian's harmonies can be identified, those most relating to character. Aristotle appears implicitly to accept implicitly the use of this and other harmonies as the same categories, the mixed Lydian, which also mode characteristic of tragic choruses for the purposes of listening to others perform. The Hypothorian and Hypothorian modes are associated particularly with the heroes of tragedy. So therefore, this action of this. Um, um, Again, it is evident harmonies are used, but not that all are to be used in the same manner, but with a view to education, those most relating to the character should be used, right? And with a view to listening to others perform, those relating to action and those inspiration, right? You don't engage in this, but in other words, you are moved by it, you're not exercising it. You should, you know. For the passions that occur strongly in connection with certain sorts of souls is present in all. In other words, the passions that strongly a connection occur strongly in connection with certain souls is present in all, but differs by greater and less, in other words, more or less. For example, pity and fear are both present in all, but how much so, more or less, in degrees of manner. And further, inspirations are present in all, but some may be inspired more and some others less. There are certain persons who are possessed by this motion, but as a result of the sacred tunes, when they use the tunes that put their soul in a frenzy, we see them coming down as if obtaining a cure, purification, or release, catharsis, right? In other words, this is Aristotle appears here is referred to melancholics, people susceptible to episodes of inspired or enthusiastic madness because of a physiological condition that involves the excess of bile. Right? This is problems, right? He indicates that of purifications of such person could occur through exposure to sacred tunes, identified tunes of Olympus, mentioned chapter 5. In the context of Dionysian literature, where their normal effect is precisely to induce this experience of religious inspiration and frenzy. So this idea of purification, right? The same uh, um, the same thing then must necessarily be experienced also by pitying and the fearful, as well as by the generally passionate, and by others insofar as each falls a share in such things. And we all share in those things, and then the music feels those things. And there must occur for all a certain purification and a feeling of relief accompanied by pleasure. In other words, the release of it is accompanied by pleasure. Now, 38. This sentence is arguably intended to describe the effect of tragic performances on the audience, right? So therefore, he's expecting this, explaining the audience. So we're seeing not only learning how to do it, but also watching it. The effects of this is to what? We see the feelings, we get those emotions, it releases because we also partake. It forces us to kind of release. We get a pleasure from this, a certain relief accompanied by pleasure, and in a way, in a similar way, the purification. Again, reading catharsis here rather than conjecture practica. So I think uh, in the way of the catharsis, cathartic tunes as well provide harmless delight to human beings. In a similar way, these cathartic tunes provide harmless delight. They help us. They give us some pleasure, and they give us release. They give us harmless delights. Hence, it hence it is to be set down that contestants undertaking theoretical music should use harmonies of this sort and tunes of this sort. So, therefore, those who are doing these kind of things, 40. One or more word appears to be dropped out of his text. He's agreeing with Dulles here. Should use harmonies of this sort and tunes, but as the spectator, is twofold. The one free and educated, the other crude and composed of workers and laborers of this sort. The contests and spectacles are to be assigned to such persons as well as reviewed to the rest. In other words, both. So therefore, contests are problematic. Thus, as the souls are disordered from the disposition that accords with nature, so too are the deviations among the harmonies. And the tunes that are strained and highly colored and what is akin to according to nature is what creates pleasures for each sort of individual. So what is according to nature is what. So therefore, we have the laborer, and there was given that the free person and the educated is going to be moved by different tunes and different signs of the labor of the body, right? The mind and the body will be related to different tunes by different melodies and different things. And therefore, he says the tunes that are strained and highly colored, and what is akin according to nature is what creates pleasures for each sort of individual. Hence, license is to be given to those contesting with a view, with a view to this sort of spectator to use a certain sort of music of this type. So therefore, the spectator here is going to be allowed here. This is Republic. This here is that deviant harmonies are probably relaxed and strained Lydian. The former are associated with feasting and drinking, the latter with funeral celebrations. The strained and highly colored tunes are probably Perithian and of the chromatic and colored variety associated with dynamic poetry of the list. In other words, they serve a purpose. They help the different audiences do it. But at the same thing about this is, but this is for someone who's going to be doing that, for knowing how to do this to affect an audience, right? Now, this is not the kind of things you do as the educated person, because you're not educating so that you are a performer. You're educating that to be a user, the judge. So this is going beyond that thing. This is the effect of this. The question that you're going to have to have people trained about this. In other words, this is not discussion of that, but how these tunes that the workers who do it, or the experts who do it. You need the experts to do these tunes because they have the effect for the viewers, the people who are watching plays, the players. Now but this is you're not supposed to become that people. The education is not designed of the free man is not to produce this, but rather to judge it and to be able to exercise it, not to be. Therefore, this is the point, the difference here, right? This is the distinction, knowing that you need to be able to do this, right? Hence, license to be given these contests with a view to education, as was said. Those of the tunes that relate to character are to be used in harmonies of this sort. So therefore, the Dorian is of this sort, as was said before, and one should accept any other that is approved by us who sharing in the pursuit of philosophy and of education concerning music. In other words, the Dorian and things like the Dorian. This is what character built. This question of good character. The question of this. The Socrates of the Republic is not correct in leaving Parenthian alone in education together with Dorian, especially as he rejects the flute among the instruments. Again, this is a Republic, right? This is criticizing player. For Parenthian has the same power as the harmony, as the flute, among the instruments. So this is cathartic. Both characteristically frenzy and passionate. Poetry makes this clear. For all excitement and all motion of this sort belongs particularly to the flute among the instruments, while among the harmonies, these things find what is appropriate to them in the Perithian tunes. The dithyramb, for example, is held by agreement to be Perithian. Many incidents of this are mentioned by those who understand these matters, but particularly in the fact of that Philorexos attempted to compose a diorama in Dorians, the Milesians, but was unable to do it. But because of its very nature, he fell back on the Perithian again, the harmony appropriate to it. The Dorian is not effective. In other words, it wants to purge it. He's trying to get a catharsis, purgatory thing. So the Perithians are purgatory. They are this cathartic kind of music, whereas this building of character, the building of character, the Dorian that emphasizes character, good character, good the Dorian style is not compatible with that. Okay. Concerning Dorian, all agree that it is most steadfast and has the most of all courageous character. Right? He builds the question of courage. Further, since we praise the middle between the extremes and asserts that it's, in other words, this idea of the middle between the extreme high and the deficiency, right? And since the Dorian has this nature relative to the other harmonies, in other words, it's not extreme, it's not defective, and it's not too extreme, it's that middle ground. It is evident that it's appropriate for younger persons to be educated particularly in Dorian tunes, not the frenzied and not the overly advanced, right? And therefore, courage, right? Building their courage, building their Dorians tied to the Spartans, building their courage, right? There are two aims: the possible and the appropriate. Okay, the two aims in this music education: what is possible versus what is appropriate. Individuals should undertake things possible and appropriate for them. So, what is possible, what they are capable of doing, versus whether they should do it appropriate. In other words, what is they're capable of doing, what they can do, versus whether they should do it. Right, should be done for them. These things too are defined by ages. It is not easy for those exhausted with age, for example, to sing the strain harmonies. But nature suggests that the relaxed one should intended for persons of such and age. So if you're older like this, you don't string the powerful, the strained the harmonies. You should do more stronger. So different ages have different tones and different types of things. Hence, some of those connected with music rightly criticize Socrates for this as well, that he would reject for purpose of education the relaxed harmonies. In other words, 43, again, Plato's Republic, there he's exactly right. Taking them to having the effect of drinking, not of drunkenness. And drunkenness gives rise rather to excitement, but does not give rise to drunkenness gives rise to excitement, but to of exhaustion. As drunkenness gives rise, there's the whole question of drunkenness, right? This whole, in fact, the laws, right? The drunkenness and laws of a moderation. Drunkenness and the laws point to a moderation. So there's something wrong with the Socrates Republic criticizes this, right? These relaxed harmonies, taking them to have an effect related to drinking, not of drunkenness, as drunkenness gives rise rather to excitement, but not give rise to, not of drunkenness, as drunkenness gives rise to, but of exhaustion, right? This idea that drunkenness gives rise to exhaustion, but rather the drinking that gives exhaustion. So one should take up both harmonies of this sort and tunes of this sort with the view to the age which comes when they're older. So these tunes and olds that kind of like relax this, harmonies in the sense relaxed ones are old for older people. Further, if there is among the harmonies one of the sort that is appropriate to the age of children on account of the capacity to involve simultaneously both order and play. This is 44, right? Reading paideia, play, with this rather than paideia, education, right? Paideia. I think the notion of order, cosmos, would to encompass the education of character, right? Or cosmos, right? In other words, order, cosmos, and paideia, not paideia, education. Some argue, but paideia is, I think he's right here. Both order and play, as appears to be the case most particularly with Lydian among the harmonies. It is clear that these three are to be made defining principles for the purpose of education: the middle, the possible, and the appropriate. Now, this paragraph is regarded by some scholars in interpretation. I rightly believe the associations of the relaxed Lydian mode with education is contrary to Aristotle's early argument, as the notion of old men should sing, right? Both appear to have been characteristic of the dominant school. Kraut defends the passage as Aristotelian. Now, there's a question: did someone add this here? It seems to contradict it. But I would leave it there. There is a point here. That, in other words, there's something he says here. He says that the older should sing, but they should sing these more destroying things, right? Um, um, uh, Further, the harmonies appropriate to the age of children. The question of children, right? The children ones, on account of the capacity to involve both of them, order and play, appears to be the case most particularly the Lydian of the harmonies. It is clear that these three harmonies are to be made the defining principles of education: the middle, the possible, and the appropriate. The middle, something that moderates, the middling tones that moderate between extremes and height, then the possible, what is possible for them, and what is appropriate. These are the three questions. The tone should aim at moderation. In other words, it shouldn't height to extremes. The things of education, the things that the harmonies that are tied to education is these middling tones that moderate and do things like this. Now, of course, the example of the elder people who needs these relaxing tones, that therefore, and the young may need to get energy to do things. So therefore, the appropriateness to it, right? The question of what type is appropriate. So therefore, the middle. But even then, there's going to be some kind of middle point. You can go too far at one or too little in the other one. So again, this question of the middle or the right amount, and what is possible, what can be done, how can it be done. and then the appropriateness. And this ends the politics. Here we end the politics and our examination of the politics. So I hope you enjoyed our time together reading the politics. We're done, so this ends the politics in that sense. If you have any comments or questions about this chapter or about the politics as a whole, anything you want to cut, please leave the note below and the comments in the comment section. If you liked it, what have you done? Like it. If you share it with a friend, share it around. If you didn't like it, you can say you didn't like it, but say why. But if you liked it and you wanted to get more of these future things and things, particularly as we turn to our next subjects, when we address things which I'm going to be focusing, moving to um, Montesquieu spirit of the laws. Um, well, therefore, that takes us to the next things, and probably maybe have less, may not have as many per week in that sense. So, with this, we end. You can follow me on social media links below. If you're not subscribed, subscribe if you want to grow our channel. You can follow me on social media, my media social links below. If you want to help contribute to this, help me do fund these things a little bit, you can become a member if you subscribe to our Patreon links below. Another way you can do it, help me out. If you want to get sent, help me in developing. You can buy this book. Now we're coming to the end of the politics, so therefore my shilling of this is kind of coming to an end. But this is a book on Aristotle's politics. You can, um, uh, 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 this is like Cliff Notes, and this is not a book, not a commentary as my other books, but rather this is a study guide. This is not a study guide, but a workbook, as I say. It's a notebook on Aristotle's politics, a workbook. It is like Cliff's Notes. It looks not only as it gives an introduction to the politics as a whole, but also book by book, chapter by chapter. It looks at the themes, issues. It gives summaries. It gives outlines, sketches, charts, and things like this. It ties the ideas that's being taught in the text to other ideas by other authors, and both within at its time that he's addressing directly, but also to those in the tradition that he, that came after him, and things that are a similarity and differences, and the discussion that we can engage in between them. This is a very useful book. It's available through all the online bookstores, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and stuff. You can buy it if you want to help, but if you buy it directly by Lulu, I get the extra profit that the bookstores will get. So please buy it by Lulu. I get a little more, but I understand Lulu doesn't always get free shipping. So people say, "Oh, I'd rather get my free shipping." But please get a friend, a student studying politics, studying this. Show them the videos as well, but also point them to this. There's thousands of students every year getting tens of thousands of Anglo-American work studying the politics. This is a very useful book for introductory students as well as advanced scholars or advanced scholars. It's a resource. It has lots of usefulness to it, and it's a tool that they should buy. Well, okay, that's it. We enjoyed you. Thank you for joining with me, and have a good day. Take care. Bye bye.